Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back to my world of stocks. So we actually just had someone, one of our Discord members, send me an article about NVIDIA stock, and he asked me to share my thoughts on the article. So I decided to just do a quick Ask Olive video for it. It actually looked kind of interesting to me. It's about HSBC Analyst saying that NVIDIA stock can still rise another 50% because their earnings power is apparently not yet priced in. So let's run through this article and I'll give you my own thoughts on it as we go through it. By the way, this came from Bo. Thank you for your support, my friend, and thank you for sending me this article. And by the way, just a friendly reminder, you can always ask me these type of questions too in the public channels of Discord so that everyone else can join us in the discussion too. But this article here is from MarketWatch, and it says NVIDIA stock can soar 50% as earnings power is still not priced in. This coming from HSBC analyst Frank Lee, who says that despite NVIDIA's continued big rally this year, investors are still significantly underestimating their earnings potential of this semiconductor and artificial intelligence company. And for his part, Lee reiterated his buy rating on the stock while also raising his price target up to $1,350, which implies more than 50% upside from the closing price at the time that the article was written, which was about $900 a share at that time. Now, I am recording this a couple days after that, but the stock price is still hovering just a bit above that, which from this price up to Lee's target, it would still be about 50% gains too. So it's still pretty relevant here. By the way, while I have this chart up here, I might as well mention that NVIDIA stock has now skyrocketed by over 2,000% just in the past 5 years alone. It's pretty freaking crazy. And full disclosure, by the way, NVIDIA stock is currently my third largest in my personal portfolio now too, after overtaking Tesla. But I actually purchased most of my shares many years ago when, a lot of people were still kind of avoiding the stock, calling it too expensive. Myself and many other bulls just felt that NVIDIA stock had a lot of long-term potential. And that just kind of goes back to what I'm always telling you guys. It's that short-term mentality versus the long-term investing mentality. Short-term, 5 years ago, many people were calling NVIDIA stock way too expensive and they didn't want to touch it. But, us bulls in NVIDIA stock, and you can go back on my channel and look at the old videos. I've probably made more bullish videos on NVIDIA stock than probably any other stock market YouTuber out there. But we just felt like long term they would kind of grow into that valuation, and that's definitely what happened. The business has flourished, and I'll show you more evidence of that as we go through this video. But for now, let's just finish up with the article here and let me share my thoughts with you. So the article goes on to say that Lee is the second most bullish of the 60 analysts surveyed by FactSet, behind Rosenblatt, who has an even higher price tag of about 55% gains from here. And it mentions that Lee believes that NVIDIA will continue to demonstrate its strong pricing power via its NVL server rack systems and GB200 processor platform, adding that despite the strong gains the stock has already seen, he thinks Wall Street will be surprised once again by their overall strength in the coming year. As for the fiscal first quarter, though, that NVIDIA will be reporting later this week, well, Lee expects sales to actually come in much higher than previous guidance by around $2 billion extra in sales. He also thinks that the current quarter will see $28 billion in revenue versus analyst forecast of less than $26.5 billion. That's for the current quarter that we're in right now. And for the next fiscal year, he also believes that we will see significant upside to earnings, which he also feels is not being priced in by Wall Street, at least not yet. As such, Lee raised his estimate for EPS by 45% higher than the FactSet consensus, while also lifting his revenue forecast up to 42% higher than FactSet as well. Those are analysts' expectations there. And just to finish up here, the article then notes that of the 60 analysts that are surveyed who cover NVIDIA, well, 53 of them are bullish, while 7 are neutral, and a whopping 0 analysts are actually bearish on the stock, none of them. So lots of positivity there, with the average price target also being about 12% higher as well. And then it just finishes up by noting that NVIDIA stock has already soared by over 200% in the 12 months, in the past 12 months, while the PHLX Semiconductor Index and the S&P 500 Index have only risen by 62% and 26% respectively. By contrast, obviously it's still very good performance too, but it just shows that NVIDIA has been on another level. Okay, so there's a few things noted here that I want to just kind of quickly touch on before we go any further. Now, first of all, there's a lot here that I agree with in the article and with what Lee said, especially on the bullish side of things, but also a little bit on the bearish side too, where it notes just how much NVIDIA stock is already up. And I'll touch more on that in just a second when we cover the valuation, because you might actually be surprised at how somewhat reasonable NVIDIA's valuation actually still is, even despite the giant climb too. But again, we'll touch on that in just a second. First, I want to address what Lee said specifically, and that's just that, he really has a very strong kind of overtone on how dominant NVIDIA is, how strong their performance is likely to continue being, and how that actually justifies that high price tag. Well, on the pricing power and strong performance side of things, guys, there is no question, at least in my mind, that NVIDIA is absolutely dominating right now, especially when it comes to AI, among other things, and that certainly leads to pricing power. And this is a case here where their GPUs are just widely considered the best in the world, and companies are scooping up as many as they can get their hands on for all of their AI and data center needs. In fact, Wells Fargo is now estimating that around 98% of the data center GPU market might actually be controlled by just NVIDIA alone. And it points to AI being the primary reason for that. There's also this report here by JP Morgan a little while back that estimated how much market share of AI related revenue each company is generating, and it put NVIDIA way ahead of everyone else at over half of the entire market. That's freaking crazy, guys. And by the way, it's not just GPUs anymore either. NVIDIA has even entered the CPU space with their newest Grace CPU line, which gets combined with their already superior GPUs to form a kind of like a 2-in-1 NVL supercomputing system. This is the platform that Lee was actually specifically highlighting in his analysis. And guys, it's an absolute powerhouse. It connects 36 Grace CPUs and 72 Blackwell GPUs to give 30 times faster real-time trillion parameter large language model inference, doing 130 terabytes per second of low latency GPU communications for AI and HPC, that's high performance computing workloads. And it does it all at 25 times less operating costs and energy. That's an absolute game changer, guys, for AI and large language models, which of course have been all the rave the past year. LLMs is what everybody's talking about. And because of it, it's already seen widespread adoption by every major cloud provider, server maker, and leading AI company, including the likes of course, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, and more. And those are the biggest players, and they're all included there. Anyway, you see these moves here, and it's no wonder that NVIDIA just continues to grow at the rates that they've been, growing at. We all know that AI will be one of the biggest markets in the world long term, with most analysts placing its value in the trillions, and NVIDIA themselves estimate at least $1 trillion addressable market just for themselves as it is. Well, in all of last year, they only generated 60 billion in sales. So even a conservative estimate of like $1 trillion market size, long term, well, that would still be around 17 times larger than NVIDIA's current size. And that's why you see these explosive growth rates, where last quarter, for example, their data center business grew more than 5 times larger year over year. And just look at their financials. Last year, their profits skyrocketed by nearly 7 times larger too. That's insane. Now, I'm not saying that those crazy, insane levels of growth will continue, but my point is that NVIDIA is absolutely on fire from a business standpoint, and I can't really see a reason for why it would slow down too much, other than just really the entire macro economy crashing, which granted, that is a very fair expectation these days. But, Lee also mentions that he thinks earnings will be better than expected. And look, I'm not a fortune teller. As a long-term minded investor, I don't make any investing decisions based on what happens on a quarterly basis. I'm always looking multi-years out and things like that. But even on that point too, that Lee emphasizes, well, I think there are some signs that NVIDIA could outperform there too. I mean, for example, we've seen huge spikes in AI spending recently from all the big players like Amazon, Meta, Microsoft, Google, Apple, and more. that could bode very well for an AI chips developer like NVIDIA. And speaking of NVIDIA developing chips, not many people actually know this, but NVIDIA doesn't actually build their own chips. Instead, they hired Taiwan Semiconductor for most of that specific work. Well, most recently, NVIDIA has not only grown to become TSMC's second largest customer, only behind Apple, but TSMC has also seen their April sales spike 60% on what they called sustained demand for AI chips, while also noting in their earnings call that they continue to see insatiable AI demand, all of which is another positive sign here for NVIDIA. On top of that, Supermicro Computer, manufacturer of AI servers that actually deploys NVIDIA chips, well, they recently saw their quarterly revenue triple as a direct result of higher demand for AI servers. And we even saw higher guidance from NVIDIA's top rivals like AMD and Intel, where AMD raised data center chip guidance while Intel raised their AI accelerator revenue guidance for the year, noting increasing momentum heading into next year on the back of their Gaudi 3 AI chip. Now, you might have noticed that in some of those headlines, they mentioned that a stock still fell regardless because of perhaps not meeting the really high expectations, which, to be fair, that is something that could hurt NVIDIA, at least in the short term. You know, our analysts may be expecting a little bit too much from them. Has the valuation ballooned so high? Has the stock risen by so much to where NVIDIA has to perform at the best levels? And if not, it might actually dip a bit. That's all, you know, a very real concern, or, you know, those are reasonable expectations too. I mean, NVIDIA is, of course, now one of the most valued companies in the entire world. So I do feel like there is really no room for error at these prices, and they'll likely need to come out with amazing performance every quarter from here on out to kind of justify those levels. However, I will say that the valuation, you know, a lot of people talk about how expensive NVIDIA stock is. I'm not sure people are actually looking very deep into the valuation, because if you do look at it, it's actually not as crazy as you might think. Let me just show you some of these numbers here. So here's the numbers from Seeking Alpha. Now, forward PE, yeah, it's still pretty high, about 30 to 50% higher than the sector median. So that's the short-term kind of valuation right there. Yeah, it's a bit high. I for sure grant you that. However, compared to their own 5-year average, it's actually as much as 36% cheaper, which means that the business is improving, and that's kind of helping them grow into that valuation. And here's the really crazy part here, the PEG ratio. This factors in future profit growth. It's not just around 50% cheaper than their own 5-year average, but guys, it's also 46% cheaper than the sector median. That's pretty freaking wild for what is what we've already established as by far the market leader here, and yet their PEG ratio is still around 1, which is generally considered a good valuation on its own, but it's also close to 50% lower than the sector. That's pretty crazy, and it's really because of that really high profit growth that NVIDIA has been experiencing, and that they're expected to continue to experience long term, which, you know, to be fair, that's exactly what Lee mentioned in that article, that Wall Street is not yet pricing in that future profitability, perhaps into that valuation, at least not quite yet. But at the same time, I do think that expectations are high, and so NVIDIA will have to perform. It's a bit of a balancing act, guys. Like, I do feel that the valuation is a little high. I just don't think it's as crazy as maybe some other people would like you to think. And overall, I just think, you know, NVIDIA is such a good stock. It probably deserves a position in most people's portfolios, at least just a tiny one, just kind of in case for the long term. So we'll see. Like I said, this is one of my largest positions. I'm not currently adding more to my personal portfolio at the moment, although I certainly could still add some to our community portfolio. That's been a newer position, and I might add more there. And that's kind of how I feel about it. I feel that if I didn't already own NVIDIA stock, I would probably buy just a small amount just in case, and then just kind of add to it on any fluctuations in that stock price, because, you know, we have earnings coming up this week for NVIDIA stock. This coming week, they're going to be announcing earnings. If the stock happens to fall hard on those earnings, if earnings come out and they disappoint and the stock falls hard, that would be a fantastic buying opportunity, in my opinion. Now, the stock could soar, it could rise even more, or it could just kind of stay the same. But as a shareholder, I actually want it to go down. I would love to see NVIDIA stock go down so that I could pick up more, and especially for our community portfolio. So, and I can guarantee you guys, in the community portfolio where it's a brand new position, if NVIDIA stock falls on earnings, that'll definitely be a stock that I think we'll be adding to on there as well. But like I said, in my personal portfolio, I've already built it up for such a long time. It's a position that I've already got such a great cost basis on. It's already one of my largest. There's not much reason for me to be messing with it too much at those levels. Anyway, I hope that you enjoyed this video. We'll have to see what happens. I'll try to update you guys, and be sure to share any of your thoughts down in the comment section. I'd love to hear from you. And thanks again, by the way, Bo, for sending me that interesting article. Of course, you guys can always send me stuff like that too, and I may make videos on that. And if you do want to join our community Discord, there's links in the description for the Patreon. You can get access to it. But anyway, thanks again for stopping by, my friends. I hope that you're all doing well. I wish you the best of luck with any investing decisions you make, and I will catch you in the next one. All right, take care, my friends. All right, bye-bye.